nobody was happy, and I thought, Jesus Lord, and they had this big space. And then they brought Larry in, and it was about 2 months or 3 months before I went back in again. And when I back in, my God, there were people there. Everybody was happy. People were jumping up and down, and that's a great tribute to you. So you're in good hands, guys.
I'll add one thing. We did it by taking care of each other and having fun. And it's the same way we're going to do it here. We're going to take care of one another. We're going to have a good time. We're going to stay relaxed, and we're going to kick everybody's ass out there that doesn't belong to Intero.
That's a good thing to do. That's what you want to do. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about the national economy. We're going to talk about the San Francisco Bay Area. I want to talk about real estate last year to this year, what I think is different, and where I think real estate is going. So when we started this year, the Federal Reserve said we were going to be at a 3% GDP, but I don't know that we're going to get there, because if you remember, the first quarter turned out to be not so good. In fact, it came in pretty negative. We were down 1.5, 1.7%. So we really have to make it up in the second, third, and fourth quarter. I think the second quarter will be better, as will the third and fourth, but we really have to have some high numbers in order to get to that 3%. So I think we're probably going to come in probably at about 2.5, probably 2.8 at the top. But that's where we've been for the last couple of years. It's positive, but it's not where we need to be. And if you heard Mrs. Yellen this morning, she was talking to the Senate, and she basically said that. She said she's going to keep interest rates low. She's going to continue to pull back on the buying of mortgages, on that easing. We're down to about $45 billion now. She'll be through doing that probably by October. But she said she's not happy with the growth numbers. She's not happy with productivity. She thinks we have inflation, but it's not at 2%. So she thinks it's only at about 1.1%. She knows that they say unemployment is at 6.3%, but she doesn't believe that number either. She thinks it's a lot more than that. So basically what she said is, look, we are not going to do anything to muck this economy getting better. So by raising interest rates, that would probably shock the system. So I think she's pretty convinced that she needs to keep interest rates low, as does the rest of the world. And I think she will probably do that into at least the third quarter of next year. So where are you seeing that 10-year note? Well, it was at 3%, if you remember, a little while ago. It's down to 2.5 this morning. Now, why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the biggest reasons is that basically the banks, because of Dodd-Frank, have had to increase their capital reserves, which means that they've had to build up their capital, and they do that by buying 10-year notes. The second thing is, if you look around the world, a lot of countries now are buying our 10-year notes, and here's why. Because if you go to Germany and you buy a 10-year note, they don't even pay you 2%. And if you buy a Greek bond, or basically a Spanish bond, or an Italian bond, they will give you like 3 or 4%. Now, would you really want a Greek bond at 4%? I don't think so. So you'd rather come over here and get one at 2.5, because at least you have the hope that we'll pay it off in 10 years, rather than it going under and basically it went someplace, nobody knows where, and you're never going to get paid. So at the end of the day, we have a lot of countries coming in to buy our bonds, and now you have a lot of people who are basically looking at gold and bonds again and saying the market's getting a little frothy, maybe we should start to buy some bonds. So you're seeing bond buying again, and gold, which was down 28% last year, all of a sudden people are buying gold again. And so that's why the balance between the two. Stock market, what can we say about it? It's been absolutely golden. There's not one thing you can say about it except all these namesayers that basically tell you it's doomed and we're going to go to hell in a handbasket and we're going to have the next basically blow up. I don't believe that. I think the stock market has been wonderful. It was up 30% last year. It's not up 30% this year, but doing extremely well, above 17,000. And it's interesting because last year it was all the growth stocks. That's what drove the market. This year there's much more of a balance between the growth stocks, which are the techs and the biotechs and the pharmaceuticals and all of those companies, with all the old trieds and truths. So the banks are doing well, healthcare's doing well, some of the retailers are even doing well. So at the end of the day, I think the stock market, because of a lot of things, one is because of mergers and acquisitions, they have a lot of cash, a lot of them basically are very profitable, the numbers still look good. All that basically is going to fuel a good stock market for us. And that's important to us here in this valley because we live so much on the stock market, options, warrants, that fact people play the market and work in the market, that's very important to our real estate market. So I think that the stock market will be just wonderful. What was interesting, and I think that it was also interesting to note, is now when we come down to the San Francisco Bay Area, let's talk about that. Because I think that basically when you look at the national picture, and that's what everybody gets on TV, we have to talk about the San Francisco Bay Area, and that's like water and oil. Because here we are doing so much better economically than the rest of the nation. And that's a good thing, because we like to know that. First of all, if you look at our unemployment numbers, San Francisco is at about 4.3%. Marin County is below 4%. San Mateo County is about 4.6. Santa Clara County, where you are, is basically about 5.5%, 5%. And then Alameda and Contra Costa, which were the dregs of the earth, they're still about 6 or 7%, but they were way up in double digit at one time, so they've done extremely better. So employment-wise, we're doing really well. Now, when you look at the employment numbers, they're telling us we're getting about 200,000 jobs every month for the last 6 months. But let's really look at the kind of jobs we're getting versus what we get here. Because what we're getting on those jobs are mostly part-time jobs. Basically, participation rate of the economy across the nation is only 62%, the lowest in 36 years. That's one of the concerns. We're getting jobs, but they're not the right jobs. You compare that to the jobs here. The jobs here are basically, in the last 2 years, 75,000 new jobs, of which almost 90% of them are full-time. And the average salary now in Silicon Valley, if you're a programmer right out of school, a young kid, you don't know anything, about $150,000 to $175,000 a year. So if you want to know why people have money here, that's the beginning of what we would call the entry level to the market. That doesn't even include the millennials that have more money than God, right? So at the end of the day, that's a very important concept for us because we have enough wealth here to fuel what everyone is saying, this very expensive real estate market. There was something very interesting, and you should take these numbers down. This is amazing in the paper yesterday. This is about high-end retailers coming into basically the San Jose, San Francisco, Marin County, and over across the Bay Area. And I'll just name some of these because they're interesting. Because listen, a lot of the women here, and some of you men will know this, Prada, Ferragamo, Burberry, Louis Vuitton, Cartier, basically David Yurman, Carolyn Herrera, and Alexander McQueen. But listen to these statistics because this is amazing. In the Bay Area, according to the Forbes, the big list they put out every year, there are now basically 65 billionaires in Silicon Valley. Billionaires, not millionaires, all right? That's the most in the nation. But this is the one that blew my mind. According to Wealth Engine, Inc., a research and marketing firm, there are now 237,946 millionaires in San Jose alone. Are you listening to that number? So at the end of the day, how can you fault that, right? How can you say anything about where we live except to say thank God and get down every day and thank God that you got that? Okay. So I thought that was really interesting. Now, let me just tell you, I get a call the other day, and I like to tell people when I talk about San Francisco, I think about it as an international city, because people always say to me, but Carole, the price in San Francisco averages now about $1.3 million, that's about $1,250 a square foot. Oh my God, nobody can afford to live in San Francisco. Well, some people can and some people can't, and that's the way life works out, okay? But I said, you know what? Let's talk about international cities because we're not that expensive. Because if you had to live in London, it's $6,500 a square foot right now. Go to Beijing, go to Singapore. We look cheap compared to what they are. So we're an international city, but we're at the bottom rung right now because we're at $1,250 a square foot and probably going up somewhat. So at the end of the day, international cities, they're known around the world. People visit them. They're gateways to all the other emerging countries. We're the gateway to the Pacific Rim. Cultural diversity, employment diversity. We have Stanford and Cal, etc. That makes us an international city. So when people call me up, like from the Wall Street Journal, who I work for, and they try to compare us to Houston or Atlanta or Boston or any of these places, I cut them off very quickly by saying, are you out of your mind? Have you ever been to Houston? Have you ever gotten off a plane and thought, my God, where am I, in the desert? I said, that's how you feel. So at the end of the day, I said, have you been to San Francisco? Maybe you can notice the difference. One is flat. There's basically nothing there but ragweed, basically dust, and basically humidity. You get off of San Francisco, we got the pyramid building here. I'm sure you've seen it once in your life. So at the end of the day, we're an international city. But I get a call from the Wall Street Journal about 2 weeks ago, and this woman wants to do an article, okay? And the article that she wants to do is, she wants to do an article about how Silicon Valley is going to blow up again. All those of the Google, Yahoo, Facebooks, they're all living on, just dreams and air. They're overpriced. Everybody here is paying a fortune for everything. We're all crazy. We're all nuts out here. And the whole place is going to blow up and we're going to have another bubble. And she needed verification from somebody out here because she couldn't just use her knowledge because she's back east. And they always call me when they want verification from the West Coast. And so I didn't want to tell her she was a total and complete idiot because they pay me money every month. So I figured I better be tactful. And it's very hard for me at my age to remain tactful, believe me, because I realize my time here is short, so I don't care what you think, and I don't care whether it's PC correct, and I don't care whether you like it. It's the way it is, and that's the worst thing is you can fire me and tell me not to come back. I'll go home. I don't care. I get tired already by 12 o'clock, so it's not a problem. So at the end of the day, I said to her, well, why don't I try to take the other side of the story you want to do, and let's talk about this. So I said, in doing that, let's go back to the year 2000, because there was a bubble in Silicon Valley at that time. There were 3 big companies there, if you remember. Hewlett-Packard, IBM and Apple, and then you had all these baby companies trying to get a lot of money in, which they did from all the VCs, going out the door as fast as it was going in, and everybody knew the internet was good, and they knew the internet was important, and it was going to change things, but nobody liked it. In the year 2000, you didn't like computers, you knew that. It was just another thing that everybody was trying to push down on you that you didn't want to do. Advertisers weren't going to be paying anything to be on something that they didn't think people liked. So of course what happened is it inflated, it artificially inflated, and it blew up. And then trying to get us out of that blow up and recession, we basically started to let everybody and anybody get into the housing market, and everybody got all those negative amortizations and crazy loans, and we went from 5 million to 7 million, and those people never should have had a house, and they didn't buy a house. All they did was get a loan from the bank, and 3 years later all the interest rates went up, so they were really renting, and they didn't realize it, and the whole place blew up, and pretty soon the whole country blew up, and everybody had no loans, everybody's business closed down. Poor Mr. Bernanke comes in, and what does he do? He has 2 rotten choices. One is he can let the place go further under and say, look, capitalism will repair itself, so I'm just going to wait and see what happens. Or he can say the government is the only entity that can help, because we can print money down at the Xerox machines in the Treasury, and that's what we're going to do. We're opening the spigots, we're bringing in those machines, honey, and we're going to roll those bills out as fast as we can. So guess what? We're the Federal Reserve. We now have $800 billion on our balance sheet, but bring me your crap, bring me anything you want. I'll take AIG, I'll take GM, I'll take Fannie, I'll take Freddie, I'll take everybody and anything, and man, that's how I got to $4 trillion real fast. And I'm going to keep it in the federal balance sheet. Now we're leveraging and we're in a lot of debt, but hell, what difference does it make? We'll just hold it and we'll keep printing money. And everybody around the world criticized him for that, except now they're all doing it too, because they found out by trying to make these countries like Greece and Spain and Portugal and Italy live within their means, they had riots in the street. So all of a sudden, Mr. Draghi, who is now the head of the European Common Bank, he got real smart real fast, because he has to go home to Italy and they'll kill him there if he doesn't give them money. You know that. So at the end of the day, they've slowly worked about this recession. And you know, as an economist, you think to yourself, you never incur more debt to get out of debt. But that's exactly what we've done. So everyone always asks me, and this woman, the first thing she said to me was, well, with all this debt, what happens at the end of the day? I said, at the end of the day, we hit the wall. Obviously, at the end of the day, you got to stop doing something. I said, but I figured it out, I think. Everybody that's doing it now will be dead by the time we hit that wall, so they don't care what happens because they won't be here. So what the hell do we care? Somebody else will have to worry about it. So at the end of the day, I said to her, that was the year 2000. I said, we've moved 50 years in the last 14, because look at now what you have in Silicon Valley. You have Facebook, you have Yahoo, you have LinkedIn, you have Salesforce.com, you've got Google, you've got basically Cisco, you've got Intel, you've still got Apple, HP, and you've still got all the biggies. All of a sudden, let's look at those companies. If you add up what they have just sitting in cash on a given day, it's close to $2 trillion. If you add what they have abroad and they would bring that money here, it's probably another 5 or 6 trillion. So we're looking at companies that together have $8 trillion. And you know what you can do with $8 trillion? A hell of a lot. You can buy companies, sell companies, you can basically take your stock and split it the way Apple did, you can give out dividends, you can merge, you can develop stuff, you can do almost anything you want. So I said to her, here's the difference. Let's take 1 week in the life of Silicon Valley. Let's just take a week of what they do there. Because what I said to her was, these companies now are out there, and you know what? Not only are they developing and creating new applications, but they're out there buying 6, 7, 8 companies a week, which is generating tremendous cash flow into this valley. So I said, let's talk about Facebook, and let's talk about their company that they bought called WhatsApp, right? The one they paid $19 billion for. And she said to me, yeah, well, you have to agree that was overpaying. And my answer to her was, wait a moment, please. Mr. Zuckerberg is 29 years old. He's the 14th richest man in the world. Maybe he knew something you didn't and I didn't, because I know I'm not on the Forbes 400 list, are you? So she said, no. I said, so let's think about this. What is WhatsApp, and why would Facebook want that company and pay such a premium for a company where only 55 people work? Because when you compare Google to Facebook, here's how it works. Google has 1.5 billion people come in every month, okay? Facebook, 1.5 billion people come in. But this one over here, Google, is much older than the Facebook, and they have a national and international presence. Facebook, if you look at it, most of the people that come in there, they basically are just national users. They did not have an international presence. But guess what WhatsApp did? WhatsApp, when it started, basically was started by a Russian who said, if I can send a short message around the world, I can talk to my mother back in Russia, and that's exactly what it is. For 99 cents, you get to send something around the world. Hi, Mom, I'm doing fine, hope you're okay, talk to you next Sunday, or whatever. And it gets deleted. So they have 500 million users a month coming in, and 90% of them are international. So what he did was, in one day, he bought the international markets rather than trying to get through every country, all the rules and regulations. So he wasn't so stupid, but it gets better than that. On the 99 cents, they make 43 cents profit on every one they send out. And do you know how many messages go out every month out of WhatsApp? 50 billion messages a month. Now you go add up that number at 43 cents, and it's a pretty big number, so he's not that stupid. So he spent $19 billion in one day. He turns around 3 days later and he buys a company called Oculus, which is now the new basic company for how you're going to do video conferencing. So instead of being screen to screen, you're going to have a helmet on with glasses and earphones, right? So all people will see is your head. So you can be doing anything you want, having sex, taking a bath, you can be doing anything, and you'll be able to still work. You see, it won't matter. Having sex will not inhibit your work life anymore, because you'll be able to have Oculus on and you'll be just fine. Then we turn around and a company called Google goes out and buys a company called Triton the same week, okay? And that's basically the satellite company, because they want to increase their broadband. So two companies in 1 week spent about $25 billion. Then what happens? You hear a couple of weeks later, Apple buys Beats, right, for basically $3 billion, which you know what that is. That's the headset that they're basically going to get everybody to buy that has an iPhone, because they're going to say to you, well, you get the music, but it's no good on that little machine. You want stereophonic sound, so you're going to have the stupid headset to match it. So now we're going to sell a gazillion trillion of those. And listen to this, which just was in the paper yesterday, and I loved this. Google expands in San Francisco. Now, this is amazing. They now bought a building out by the Ferry Building, which is going to give them 250,000 more square feet. In addition, they took out another building very close to that for another 300,000 square feet. That means that when you look at Google, not only here, but just in San Francisco, they now border almost 1 million square feet of space in the city. Now, why do you think they did this? Oh, because we're going in the toilet? Because we're going to have a big recession again? Because we're blowing up in Silicon Valley? I don't think so. They are doing this because they know what's coming. And let's talk about another one. And if you saw the paper today, this was very interesting also. There's a company called Alibaba. I don't know how many of you have heard of Alibaba, but Alibaba is the biggest thing out there now. Okay, Alibaba is basically a Chinese company, and basically was founded by a teacher, a gentleman named Mr. Ma, and it is the biggest online company. It's the Google, it's the eBay, it's the PayPal, it's basically Amazon.com of China. And they have now applied to go public, which probably will happen at the end of this year or early next year. Now let's talk a minute about what Alibaba is. Alibaba has two main sites. One is called Tabayo, which means treasure chest, and that's where they have 800 million products. Not 800,000, 800 million products. The other is called Tmall, and that's where big companies advertise, and they're spending $1 million to $2 million a day to be on that site. He just opened another site here in the United States called 11 Main Street, and that's going to take on Amazon, is what he said. This morning, he just did a deal with Lionsgate, you know, the video and the people, and he's going to start to do what Netflix did, which was basically with House of Cards, start to make their own movies now. Last week, he just bought for $800 million another production company, another movie company, and he just bought up all the theaters almost in China. So you get the picture of what's happening. When he goes public, they're saying that the value of that company will be worth probably about $200 billion. Now, here's why it's important to us. He has a headquarters here. He just opened an office here. Oh, and by the way, Yahoo owns basically about 20% of Alibaba. And in the agreement when they bought it, it said that the first day it trades, they must sell 10% of their stock. Have to do that. So if it's $200 billion, that's going to be $20 billion coming into Yahoo coffers day one. The other thing is, look what's happening in Silicon Valley, all the international companies that are coming. Go up 101 towards Redwood City and you'll see a big sign now that says SoftBank.
Yeah.
What the hell is SoftBank? Well, SoftBank is Mr. Japan. That's what you know. He now owns everything in Japan, but he just bought 70% of Sprint. And I don't know if you saw him on CNBC the other day, but he did an interview, and I just love it that these people come here and challenge us. It is wonderful. He's talking in English, and he said he came here, and he said to them at Sprint that he didn't like being number 3, because he's never number 3, and he's trying to buy T-Mobile, you know that, but the government's going to make that a little bit difficult. So he said, I gave them a few times in a few months to come up with a plan of how we can expand the network, and I told them I'd give them $1 billion to do that, and I want a plan to see how long it's going to take. He said, so I come over here, and he said, I'm sitting down, and they give me this beautiful book, and he holds up this book, beautifully bound, looks lovely, and he said, they told me it was going to take 6 years to do that. He said, so what I did is, he said, I got out a piece of paper out of my pocket, and I showed them my plan, and my plan said 6 months. And they said, but you can't do that in 6 months. He said, no. You can't do that in 6 months. I can do it in 6 months because I'm bringing 100 Japanese engineers over here. And what's going to happen is you either will have a job or you'll be out of a job because 6 months, that's my plan. And I own the company, so that's the way that it works. So I love that. So you begin to understand what's happening, all right? Let me talk a little bit about something else that I think you all need to know about. Bitcoin. How many of you heard about Bitcoin? Okay, let me tell you why I talk about it before I talk about real estate, because it's coming down to real estate. This is an actual magazine that's out now. Do you know there are 240 companies now dealing in this entity, or this basically the monetary transaction process that we call Bitcoins? There's Bitcoin, RoboCoin, Litecoins, etc. Now, why is this important? Because it's going to become an asset that people are going to use in lieu of or in place of or part of currency, and it's going to be something that people are going to want to do with real estate to buy and sell it, but it's becoming very popular around the world and especially on Wall Street. So let's talk about what Bitcoin is for a minute. It was started in the 1980s in Japan, and he gave it this name Bitcoin, which is a bad name, because it is not a currency. What it is a virtual, on a computer system, monetary transaction process whereby people can buy and sell things using, instead of a currency, this Bitcoin, all right? And at the end of the day, when he started it, he did it because when you're doing things globally, which is now we're a global world, and you have basically foreigners coming here that are about basically 22% of your market and growing. So they've got money sitting in China. They got to get it out of China to Singapore, get it out of that, get it over here through Homeland Security. It's a pain in the ass is what it is. So this makes it easy if you can go to a company and you can all just do it, buy it, and sell it in Bitcoins or Litecoins or RoboCoins. So at the end of the day, he started this, and it started and it took off, but it took a long time to take off. Now, all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, a company called Silk Road went into the business of doing that. They got $1 billion of people's money and transferred it into these ledger accounts, because that's what happens. You go down to the bank, you get $1,000 in cash, you go to one of these companies, and you give them the money, and they give you not a coin back, they give you a ledger account. Like, when you get gas, the ledger comes out, and it says Carole Rodoni has X amount of Bitcoins. Now, how do they know the value of the Bitcoin? Because they have limited them so far to 20 million of them basically circulating every day, and that's how they determine the value. So they started at about $12. They've been as high as $1,200. They're about $300, $400, $500 now, and they radiate, and it's very flexible, and it can change hourly. So what people are doing is they're playing it like a day trading stock. That's what's happened to it. So all the guys on Wall Street and people are playing this Bitcoin as basically a stock. Get in the morning, get out in the afternoon, get back in the morning, get out in the afternoon, because of the fact that the currency value of it changes so rapidly. So at the end of the day, let's just say I go to this company, I've given them the $1,000, I get 10 Bitcoins. Now I can go over to Larry, and Larry wants to buy something I have here. And so he has $1,000 in Bitcoins, and he has 10 too. So he's going to have to give me one now to buy what he wants. So the company takes a little fee, and what they do is they take one from him, put it on my ledger, and basically he has one less. But nobody knows anything about it. The government isn't told, the SEC doesn't know. It's all put around sort of the back end, see? So that's why they want to do it, because it's no transparency and it's all hidden. So of course the government now is hysterical about that because they don't like that. So Silk Road, $1 billion in drugs, guns, and human trafficking. So the government closes it down. But let me tell you what has happened since the government closed it down. The government tells you, oh, this is terrible, this Bitcoin bit. We just think this is the most awful thing to ever hit. The SEC would have to look at this. This isn't regulated. It's not like a bank. So what do you think that the government did last week? They took 144,000 of the Bitcoins that they got back out of Silk Road, and they auctioned them off. And they actually had an auction and put a huge value on them, and a man named Draper, who's a tech billionaire in this valley, bought them. And do you know that in order to be in the auction, you had to put up $200,000 in currency called American dollars to even participate? So the government's now in the business of this thing that they quote-unquote just hate. Well, they've decided now that probably what they're going to do is look at it, okay, and that they're probably going to make it at some point a currency. But the IRS came in a month ago, and the IRS said, wait a minute, it's not a currency, but it's an asset. It's like stock or bonds or gold because you guys are all trading it to the tune of, listen to this, probably $500 million to basically $700 million a day. Okay, on Wall Street, around the world, wherever they're doing it. So at the end of the day, they said, well, it's an asset, therefore, Carole, you put $1,000 in, now you're going to change your Bitcoins back into dollars. But you're going to get $1,500 because the value went up. So guess what? Hello, Mr. IRS would like you to pay a capital gain on that $500 that you made. So it's not a currency, they don't like it, they don't want to accept it, but they can sure in the hell tax you on it. So that's what's happening. Now, how do I relate that to real estate? Because last year, homes were sold using Bitcoins. And what you are going to begin to see, because you do all the players here in Silicon Valley, people are going to ask you, will they accept the seller a Bitcoin, would they accept a Litecoin or a RoboCoin? And people say to me, oh, but Carole, look, I kind of hear about it. Okay, Bitcoin's going into the ATM business. There's a company called RoboCoin, all right? They will have 600 ATM machines by the end of the year across the United States, growing to 6,000 probably in the next year and a half. And where do you think they're going to put them? Gas stations, pharmacies, retail stores. So you walk in, you throw your change in, you get Bitcoins, you can put the change back and you get back money, or Bitcoins back, etc. The ledger. Now, we also know that basically if you work in Overstock.com, they'll take Bitcoins. DirecTV, you can pay in Bitcoins. Did you know that? And you know who made them do that? Their employees, because they demanded that they be allowed to pay in Bitcoins rather than in dollars. So it's coming. Now let me just tell you how it relates to real estate. Mr. Zuckerberg just bought a house in Santa Cruz, okay? And I should say that very cautiously because I was involved with that, but I should be quiet about it, so I'm not telling you where or whatever. But let me tell you what he did. He bought the house and paid cash for it, which of course he would, because he's not going to basically get a mortgage. But then he refinanced it, because that's what they all do. They pay cash, but they're not keeping these houses free and clear. They leverage everything, these young people. All right. So he leverages it, and he turns the money into Bitcoins. Are you listening to me? So now he's got the house, an asset that he thinks will appreciate over time, and he's using that to refi it to get now Bitcoins. Now he starts to play the Bitcoin market. Now, at some point in time, he will sell that property to somebody who will give him Bitcoins back, or he'll change the Bitcoins back into dollars, and that's how he'll do it. And they're all doing that. And I was in an office yesterday where someone came up to me and she said she's had 2 clients that have basically talked about doing these transactions in Bitcoins. I'm telling you, it's coming, guys, hot and heavy. It's going to be one of the most popular things within the next couple of years, believe me, because it's easy. You can play it like a stock. So what they're doing is they're taking one asset, getting it and relating it into another asset. So you can take money out of a house and you can buy real estate, you can buy bonds, you can buy gold. Pretty soon you're going to be able to buy Bitcoins as another asset, and then one day they'll make it a currency. It won't be the world currency, but believe me, it's coming. So it's an asset right now going into a currency. Unbelievable. Okay. So now let me talk a little bit about real estate and what's happened with the real estate market. Well, let's go back, and obviously we had the worst market we've ever had. And then, because of pent-up demand and because you have a lot of money here, low interest rates, no inventory, all of a sudden people started to talk about real estate again as a darling asset. It became very popular, and over the last year, or a little bit more, you've had what I call a frenetic market, in the sense that you've had a market where you have tremendous demand, low supply, low interest rates, you had no inventory, and you have people who have a lot of cash that were sitting there and basically willing to go out and play the game, and that's exactly what happened. And they loved these bidding wars in the beginning. They just loved them because that's what they're about. They're competitors. These guys make deals. They negotiate. And they think it was wonderful. So they bid, and here was the deal. It really didn't matter about the house. What it really mattered about is, this is what's happened to real estate. I think you have really two markets now. Instead of the move up, move around, affluent, etc., you have what I call the entry market. Those are people that have to get in some place, all right? And so they're going to go and buy lifestyle and zip code, but it's going to be what they can afford, because that's it. They can't live in San Francisco. They can't live in Saratoga. So they're going to have to go to San Jose someplace or wherever. They're going to have to go what they can afford. So they are buying a zip code and a location, but it's going to be a decent location if they can afford it. What if they have to get the loan, which they will? Do they qualify? They're going to have to work within the appraisal. That whole market is there, and you need those people because they're worker bees, and we need them in our economy. They're going to have to go over to the East Bay. They're going to have to go down to Morgan Hill and Gilroy, because those are the options that they have. It's very interesting what's happening also. I think condominiums are going to become the asset of choice, and I'll tell you why. Because people have to go up now when we build. We can't go out anymore. And think of themed condominiums. Condominiums went up 32% last year in appreciation, and homes only went up 8.9%. So at the end of the day, it's going to be something that they have to do. I'm in San Carlos the other day, and the project manager for the city is there. And let me just tell you what they're going to do so that you understand how we're going to handle all these things and how real estate's going to change. And we got to get out of our boxes, and we got to get into this new world. And I'm not a proponent of being for or against it, so don't everybody when you leave say, Carole Rodoni said, and isn't she terrible, and she doesn't care about the environment. Look, I'm just telling you what's happening. It's going to happen because it's going to happen. That's the way it is. I don't get a vote, okay? That's the way it is. So at the end of the day, he was doing a presentation, and he basically said there are 5 condo projects going to start in San Carlos that are going to raise the housing units there 800. Now, the first thing that happened is somebody looks up, oh my God, the environment, the birds and the snakes and all that, whatever, okay. And what's going to happen? Oh my God, and the traffic, and the blah, blah, blah. So he said, look, here's what we've done. We have taken an okay from the state of California to take the exit and entry freeways on 101, and we're expanding those. But that doesn't solve the problem of the main street in San Carlos, which is very narrow because it's been there for 60 years. So guess what he said? Have you ever heard of the right of eminent domain, which is where they take it for public safety or because of public use? Guess what? All those little houses and shops, goodbye Charlie, and they're going to expand that. Now let me tell you what else they're going to do. You are one of these worker bees, and you can't afford to live in Saratoga. You have to go to Vallejo or Benicia or Brentwood, where for $400,000 in Brentwood, you get a 3,000 square foot, absolutely beautiful home. Okay, you know what you get here. You get nothing, right? That's it. So at the end of the day, here's what these companies are going to do. You know the buses you see that go up and down on 101 that everybody kind of hates? Well, I look at it this way. There's 48 people on that bus. I'd rather have one bus than 48 cars in front of me. I mean, I would rather have that because you're going to have them whether you like it or not. The city of San Francisco, and I laughed because I know a lot of the guys down and women in Silicon Valley. The city protested, the buses. These people were out there at the bus stops with signs. And so the city thought they solved the problem by saying to Google and Yahoo and Facebook, you're going to have to pay because it's not right that you use a bus stop to let your people on and off. They love that because now it's legal for them to stop there. Nobody can protest, and they're happy to pay the city. They don't care what you charge them. Charge them $800,000 a year. They could care less. Here's what they're going to do. I'll tell you how they're going to solve this terrible problem of people having to commute. And Larry would tell you he was commuting 2 or 4 hours a day. You do not need to be in technology in your office in order to do business. If you're a real estate manager, you got to have your butt here. But not if you're technology. You can have a meeting, you can do video conferencing, you can write a report, you can sit on a bus and meet with somebody else. So what they're going to do for these people is they're going to say, telecommute, or yeah, you got to come in. But when you're coming in 2 hours in, 2 hours back, we're going to pay you for your work time. So you will have worked an 8-hour day, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Believe me, they're already starting, and it's coming, and then these people will have a place to live. So when we talk about affordable, non-affordable, that's how they're going to solve these problems. All right. Now, let me talk a little bit about what happened also with real estate. I think this year you have an active market, so you have the entry market, and that's very hot this year. Last year it was the high-end drived everything. This year it's the entry level is really driving everything. Now you had these millennials who just loved all these bidding wars. Let me tell you what's happening in the city. They don't like bidding wars anymore. They're getting real picky and cranky. They get picky and cranky now, okay, because they've decided that, see, they liked that game, but then they found out that they were bidding against people just like them, and they didn't want to bid against people just like them. They wanted to be Yahoo against a doctor and a lawyer who they figure are idiots and they don't know what they're doing. But then they found out it's Yahoo against Facebook, against Cisco, against Intel, and see, now I got to win because it's my company, and I mean, I got to show that I can win, and that didn't get to be any fun anymore, and gee, it got to be really bad. Here's what they buy, guys, and I think it's really important. They buy lifestyle, location, and zip code. Now, I'll give you some examples. Zip code is the most important thing to them. They will not buy a house they love if it's not in the right zip code. That's just the way that it is. They have to have the zip code to show success, to show the lifestyle, to show how they live, where the kids go to school, etc., etc., etc. Now, I can give you one of my best examples. At Stanford Shopping Center, they have opened a store there called American Girl. Now, I don't know, but all the women here know. You men may not know, but Disney bought a doll company that was started in contrast to Barbie. And it was started about 20 or 30 years ago, and they're these very expensive, beautiful dolls. And I bought one for my daughter, and it was called Samantha. They only had 2 at the time. And I thought it was like the national debt when I bought it. And then they soak you in to buy the trunk and the bed and, you know, the whole bit. So my granddaughters called me at Christmas this last year, and they said for Christmas, would I take them down to American Girl, and they could pick something out they liked. So they're 6 and 4, so fine, that's a good age. All right. So I call up to find out the hours, and the woman said to me, well, it's not about the hours, it's about when we can make an appointment. I said, an appointment? What kind of an appointment do I need? She said, well, I'm sure you would want to treat the girls to a concierge service where one of our consultants can sit down with the girls and show them the doll of their choice and all the accessories that go with it. I was like in a state of shock. Are you kidding? I said to her, you're kidding, right? She said, no. She said, that's the way that it works. So this was in basically, let's see, September for December, and she couldn't even give me a date till January. Are you listening to me? Not till January. All right. So then she said to me, and of course she said to me while we were on the phone, you will want to book them up, she said, for the hairdo and the manicure and the tea. And I was like in a state of shock. Okay, so now I'm booked for everything, right? The sucker, the grandmother. Okay, we get there. The first thing is I don't like waiting in lines. I'm just too old for that. There's nobody I want to see bad enough that I'm going to stand in a line for an hour to get someplace. But I have 2 granddaughters who are all excited. Thank you, Nana, thank you. And I'm standing in this stupid line for an hour just to get in the stupid place, right? And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing here? And then this woman comes over who's a concierge consultant type who's explaining to my granddaughters everything from hell, and all I keep thinking is we're going from $100 to $200 to $300 to $500 to $1,000. Oh my God, I hope I have a credit card with the balance on it and enough for this. And I'm standing in line, I'm not even listening to her after a while because I tuned her out, and I'm watching these people go up to the cash register with the things they have, which is a 45-minute wait, and nobody is spending less than $300 or $400. It's amazing. So then we got the hairdo that matches the doll, and all the clothes that match the doll, and the stupid nail polish. So then I figure, okay, fine, I've had it. Now we're going to go upstairs to have tea. Thank God. Maybe that's in and out. We can get in and out. Oh, boy, that's what really got to me. We go upstairs, and everything's made for little people, which I understand because they're little girls that are going up there, right? So they bring out this 3-tiered tray of little cupcakes, little cookies, little whatever, and she puts down one in front of my granddaughters and one in front of me, and then she brings out a 4th one. And I said to her, oh, no, there's nobody else coming. Oh, she said, the dolls are coming. And they bring out high chairs that they attach to these little tables for the dolls. And I had the pleasure of paying for those. So I took them in a box when I went home. So I said to her, they're dead. How can she said, said, well, the dolls, the girls want the dolls to have tea with them. That's the whole point of this. And I thought to myself, what a racket. But I want to ask you a question. Do you realize what I'm telling you, the amount of money that's in this valley that people have to spend? Now, I'll give you a story. I'm in an office the other day, and a woman is crying in a conference room, and an agent comes out and says to me, Carole, do you see what this woman is doing? I said, oh my God, I hope nothing bad happened to her. She said she has $4.5 million to spend on a house, and she wants to be in the $7 million zip code because she has to be there for her lifestyle and her friends. And so she's crying because she can't do it. And her husband is there, traumatized, feeling very bad. And I don't know what to do because I can't get her in $7 million. So what do you think I should do? I said, go slap that woman. That's what you should do. I said, well, here's the only thing you can do. I said, she's not going to buy anything unless you can get her in the $7 million. So I said, there's got to be the biggest, ugliest property that's been on the market for 475 days, that's on the border right there that you get, that basically is a piece of you-know-what. That's what you have to convince her that she needs. And that's exactly what she bought, rather than buy something beautiful in the $4 million price range. And she's putting 4 children in 1 bedroom. Now, let me give you another story. I'm in another place, and last year I told everybody the first number is the most important because you had to know whether it was underpriced, overpriced, or at market in order to know what you had to do. Well, you all know that game now. So I'm in another office. It was an Intero office, and an agent comes up to me and says, Carole, this property is listed for $1.7 million, and everybody knows it should have been listed for $2 million because that's the game. You price it at 1 instead of 2, so we're going to get multiple offers. She said, but this year our problem is what is the second and third number, and what should it be? 10 all-cash offers. So I said to her, so what are you going to do? She said, oh, we're going to go in at 2.3. I said, you'll never get it at 2.3, not with 10 cash offers. I said, that's the first place people are going to go. They're going to look at percentage, and they're all going to 2.3. She says, well, what do you think it's going to take? I said, 2.6. Oh my God, Carole, 1.7 to 2.6? I said, no, 2 million to 2.3, 2.3 to 2.6. And now here's the questions you need to ask. Do you really want to buy the property? Do you really want to do that? How badly do you want it? Because in this neighborhood, in this zip code, in this location, here, that's what it's going to take. I can appreciate it if you don't want to get into this game because this is not even a bidding war anymore. This is a win or lose. It's called a competition. Then we can go someplace else. That's it. It's very simple. Those are your choices. Oh, well, we'll wait out the market. Okay, great. Let's wait out the market because here's what's going to happen. It will still appreciate. Interest rates will go up. You're not going to have a lot more inventory. You're going to have all these companies coming public. You're going to have more than 240,000 millionaires. Isn't that enough already in San Jose competing against you? Would you like another 100,000? So at the end of the day, you're going to win nothing. Oh, and by the way, when this one goes, because you didn't get it and 10 people didn't get it either, it's basically going to be up to 2.6. That's where the next one goes. You've now lost buying power, and you still don't have what you want. So good, perfect. Those are your choices are you play the game. Here we play football. Over here they're playing soccer. You're trying to play soccer in a football game, and you can't do that. So you either play or have a nice life, and it's been real grand. Okay. So it went for 2.550. So I talked to the buyer. And do you know what the buyer said to me? The buyer said to me this. Look, Carole, it's simple. I came in, I paid cash. They convinced me it should be $2 million. They convinced me where I needed to go. I refinance it. If I can't afford to take that money and put it in an investment, right, and make a couple of $100,000, I don't deserve to live in a $3 or $4 million house. And the difference on a mortgage of a couple of $100,000 at 4%, what is it, Carole? $400 or $500 a month. So I don't really care. So you have the worker bees, and you have basically this. Last thing before I close. I'm looking at real estate, and I'm looking at it, and I'm saying, look, it's going to be great for the next 3 to 5 years, and I think I can tell you why. Because look at the players who are getting into it. You know the old Fed rule, which is you never fight the Fed? Well, you never fight the powers that be that understand economics and how the world works. So who's the first one we can talk about? Mr. Warren Buffett, who is now your new owner. Second richest man in the world, always been in the real estate business, but all of a sudden decided to get into it big time. Goes to Brookstone, buys Prudential of California, Prudential of Florida, buys Intero, gets Mr. Blafari, who's now head of Berkshire Home Services. Also, they own 34 other real estate companies around the United States. Mr. Buffett, if you get on CNBC and ask for his latest interview, said real estate is the best investment of your lifetime right now. You don't fight Mr. Buffett. He's not stupid. He understands real estate now has become a darling asset. Goldman Sachs, billion-dollar funds that they're investing in real estate, all right, because they know that they can get it, it'll cash flow, or else it'll be like good rents, you can sell it 3 to 5 years out, and it will appreciate in value. The last one is all the internet companies are getting into real estate. Google just put $60 million in a company called auction.com. Look it up if you haven't tonight. Now, you're going to have people talk about it, but here's the way you talk about it. Look, real estate, they're in 42 states. They have 96,000 listings, mostly foreclosures and short sales, because their whole model is the seller does not have to pay a commission, the buyer does. So banks love that, because then they don't have to pay a commission. But here's the deal when somebody says to you, but if I go to auction.com, I won't have to pay a commission, but if I list with you, I will. Well, here's the deal. A telemarketer is going to be dealing with your property, and real estate is local, so they don't know what the hell they're doing. This is a very litigious community that we live in here in California, and basically they know nothing about networking. They don't have any kind of insights into who is what the inventory is, how it should be priced. Go get on the site and you'll see they don't have a lot in California in the high-end areas, and what they do, they've mismarked because they don't understand how to market. But let's say that you go in and you get on there, and so they set a price. You can't, they do. There's a cap. If it doesn't reach the cap, it doesn't get sold. And now they say, fine, if you need extra services, you'll pay for that. Now a buyer comes in. So the buyer comes in with an agent that they'll only pay 1%. So now you have an idiot telemarketer trying to sell your house on the sell side, and an agent who's working for 1% during the day and at night is a porno dancer. You know that's what's going to happen. Because who's going to do this for 1%? Nobody. You can't do it. You can't afford it with the liability. So at the end of the day, you get it, and let's say you get it sold. Now the buyers has to pay to auction.com a buyer's fee of 5% against the buy price. Now, they also can't demand that you use a mortgage company, but they have an agreement with NationStar, and they say this to you. In order to get into the auction as a buyer, you don't have to use them, but you must get a quote for them because we have to make sure that you're qualified. So look at the players that are in it now. The internet companies, they don't want to compete against you like this, but they want a piece of the action of something that buys or sells on their site. You've got Mr. Buffett. You've got all the big tech funds. You've got all the big international funds. You've got all the big guys on Wall Street like Goldman Sachs. So what I can say to you is, look, appreciation, yes, could be single digit, double digit. Real estate here, we're in very good shape. I think it's going to be great for the next 3 to 5 years out. I think you have a wonderful, desirable asset now that people are absolutely in love with. You're living in one of the best valleys in the world. There's so much wealth here. Are we going to run out of it? I don't think so. Because we're really only in the third inning. We keep thinking they'll never invent anything else. Yes, they will. And the internet now is not just part of the economy. It's the foundation of the world. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Mr.